Every Thanksgiving, they would come to our home in Massachusetts, near Boston, and every Christmas we would go up to Connecticut. So we did that for over 40 years, ever since I can remember. Even after I moved to the West Coast, I would come back for the holidays. But to me, this was our Japanese American community. It was a time to feel comfortable and completely safe and accepted and normal.
In my family, ochazuke was like the frontline medicine. So my bachan used to say that ochazuke was poor people's food. But for us, it was like my dad, as soon as we started to get sick or have signs of a cold, my dad would make it. So there was a real nourishing aspect of that. And I also think of like onigiri. Whenever we would visit my grandparents on their farm, we would leave with these like saran-wrapped onigiri that were so perfect and like salted in just the best ways all around with the meboshi in the center. And so those are things that we definitely carried with us.
And so I remember at the mochitsuki that they would be doing the pounding, okay? And it was great because you had the granite usu. And I remember like four people pounding, and it was great. And then there was Morimoto-san, this older woman who did the turning. And I remember being amazed on how she had to be trusting, that they're not going to mess up.
I was always the other one, the one who felt kind of different. And, there were always reminders that I was different because people would stare at us when we walked into a restaurant or a store because we were sort of an oddity. I wasn't conscious that it was a pressure to assimilate, but I felt that I knew I was different and I felt like I wanted to be like everybody else.
For me, when I was young, I looked really Asian. As I got older, I started to, my outward appearance changed a lot. But when I was little, I looked, mixed, but really, really Asian. And so for me, there was never an option to choose. My name is Kyoko Nakamaru. So I was only ever passing, even with the way that I look now, until I'm named. And I think that that's really important because I actually never had a time where I wished I was white. I wished that I could be accepted. I was definitely a racial outsider throughout my entire childhood. And I wanted that sense of belonging, but I didn't get that. We weren't Christian. We were specifically anti-war, and in a lot of ways anti-capitalist. And so growing up in this marginalized way for this country pushed me into a place where I had to be proud of who I was. And for me, that was being Japanese American.
Much of my life has revolved around bringing healing to the Japanese American community about what happened during World War II. And during World War II, I think that Nisei really went through a heavy-duty assimilation, forced assimilation, or whatever you might call it, because if you can imagine, for the young, the Nisei were young, there's still a lot of them still elementary school, high school and all. But they were brought up thinking, hey, yeah, I love my parents and all, but I really want to be accepted as a full-fledged American. During World War II, with the bombing of Pearl Harbor, all of a sudden, all Japanese Americans were the enemy. Didn't matter if you're Issei, Nisei, whatever. If you're American-born, they couldn't change their Japanese face, of course, but they felt they had to kind of cleanse themselves of their Japaneseness, their ethnic pride, ethnic heritage.
I remember my mother mentioned that her mother buried all the Japanese artifacts, that they had in their home because she didn't want any association. And this went for many Japanese families. Didn't want to have any association with any Japanese artifacts, cultural objects that could target them. And then coming out of the camp, when people were so scattered, it was very hard for people to assert pride in being Japanese. There was no community in many cases to relate to. So you just had to try to fit in with the white dominant culture.
I
Employment for the low price of your birth name. New sale. You can now be one of us. You won't want to miss it. Protection for your own side. What are you willing to pay?